The trading station called Nexus 7 floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal flower. It circled a huge gas planet named Calveth, and its lights could be seen from millions of miles away. Creatures from 12 different star systems came to this place. They traded goods. They shared knowledge. And they gave each other warnings about the many dangers hiding in the galaxy. Jake Hartley had lived on Nexus 7 for 6 months. He worked as a xenobiologist, which meant he studied alien animals. He was 28 years old, with brown hair that never stayed flat and hands that were rough from years of hard work. Before coming to space, he had grown up on a ranch in Montana. He had spent his childhood riding horses, training dogs, and learning that every animal, no matter how wild, had its own way of thinking. Jake missed Earth sometimes. He missed the smell of grass after rain. He missed the sound of horses running across open fields. But he had always dreamed of seeing what lived beyond his home planet. And now that dream had come true. On this particular evening, Jake sat alone in the observation lounge. The huge window showed the swirling colors of Calveth below, and the distant stars sparkled like diamonds scattered on black cloth. He was drinking something that tasted almost like coffee when a tall figure approached him. The figure was a Velthari named Tyric. The Velthari were strange and beautiful creatures. Their bodies were made of something like living crystal, and light passed through them in rainbow patterns. When they moved, they made soft chiming sounds. Tyric was one of the ambassadors on the station, and he had been friendly to Jake since his arrival. "Human hardly," Tyric said. His voice sounded like wind blowing through glass bells. "The Council has posted new warnings about restricted species. You should look at them. Your work requires you to know these things." Jake nodded and turned toward the holographic display that flickered to life nearby. A creature appeared on the screen, and Jake felt his breath catch in his chest. The animal was beautiful. It had a long, snake-like body covered in scales that shifted between deep purple and midnight black. Thin, skin-like wings folded against its sides. Its eyes glowed with a soft golden light that seemed almost intelligent. The creature moved with a grace that reminded Jake of the mountain lions he had seen back home. "This is the venomous glider of Sareth Prime," Tyric explained. His crystal body flickered with colors that Jake had learned meant worry. "The Council has given it an extreme threat classification. Its venom is very powerful. Just one small drop can dissolve flesh in seconds. The creature is territorial and aggressive. It cannot be tamed or trained. 3 researchers have died trying to study these animals up close." Jake leaned forward in his chair. His eyes stayed fixed on the creature gliding across the screen. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. Tyric made a sharp chiming sound that meant surprise. "Beautiful? Human hardly. These creatures are death itself. They kill without warning. They attack without reason. The official warning is very clear. Never touch a venomous glider. Never approach one. Never attempt any kind of contact. This is not advice. This is a rule that exists to keep people alive." Jake nodded slowly. He understood why the warning existed. He had seen the fear in Tyric's crystal body, but something about the creature called to him. It reminded him of the wild horses his grandfather used to point at when Jake was small. Everyone said those horses could not be tamed. His grandfather had tamed them anyway. "Has anyone tried to understand them?" Jake asked. "Not study them from far away. Actually understand them. Learn how they think. Figure out what they want." Tyric's body flickered with confusion. "I do not understand your question. They are predators. What they want is to kill. What they think about is hunting. There is nothing more to understand." Jake smiled but did not argue. He had heard similar words many times before. People said the same things about wolves, about bears, about any animal that could hurt a human. But Jake knew something that most people did not understand. Dangerous did not mean evil. Deadly did not mean mindless. Every creature had its own logic, its own needs, its own fears. The trick was learning to see the world through their eyes. Over the next 2 weeks, Jake could not stop thinking about the venomous gliders. He read every report he could find. He watched every piece of footage. He studied their movements, their hunting patterns, their social behavior. Most researchers had observed them from far away, using drones and cameras. The ones who got close had approached with weapons or protective suits. The gliders had attacked every time. But Jake noticed something interesting. In the footage where researchers kept their distance, the gliders seemed calm. They groomed each other. They played with their young. They were not mindless killing machines. They were animals protecting their territory from things they saw as threats. Jake began to form a plan. He went to the expedition office and found the schedule for upcoming research missions. A team was leaving for Sarath Prime in 3 weeks. They needed a xenobiologist to help with observations. Jake submitted his application that same day. When the approval came through, Tyrek visited Jake in his quarters. The Valthyre's crystal body pulsed with worried colors. "I have heard about your assignment," Tyrek said. "Human Hartley, I must ask you to reconsider. Sarath Prime is dangerous. The gliders have killed experienced researchers. You are young. You have much life ahead of you." Jake packed his equipment bag while he listened. He did not stop moving. "I appreciate your concern, Tyrek. I really do. But I need to see these creatures for myself." "You will observe from a safe distance, yes? You will follow all safety rules?" Jake paused and looked at his friend. Tyrek had been kind to him since his first day on the station. He did not want to lie. "I will be careful," he said finally. It was not exactly an answer, but it was the best he could offer. Tyrek stood in silence for a long moment. His rainbow light dimmed with sadness. "Humans are strange creatures," he said at last. "You run toward danger instead of away from it. I do not understand this about your species." Jake smiled and put a hand on Tyrek's smooth, cool shoulder. "Maybe that is exactly why we need to go. Because someone has to be the first to try." 3 days later, Jake boarded the transport ship heading for Sarath Prime. As the station grew smaller behind him, he felt no fear. Only excitement. Only wonder. Somewhere on that distant planet, 3 venomous gliders waited in the purple forests. They did not know it yet, but their lives were about to change, and so was his. Sarath Prime was unlike any world Jake had ever seen. The transport ship broke through the clouds, and suddenly a sea of purple stretched out below him. The trees on this planet grew taller than any building on Earth. Their bark was dark gray, almost black, and their leaves shimmered in shades of violet and deep blue. Mist hung in the valleys like rivers of white smoke, and strange calls echoed through the air. Jake pressed his face against the window like a child seeing snow for the first time. His heart beat fast with excitement. Somewhere down there, in those endless purple forests, the venomous gliders made their home. The research team set up their base camp on a rocky cliff. The location gave them a clear view of the valley below, where the gliders had built their nests. The team included 4 Valthyre scientists who moved around the camp in nervous patterns. Their crystal bodies flickered with anxious colors whenever they looked toward the nesting grounds. The team leader was a poet, Valthyre named Soren. He was older than the others, and his crystal had a slightly cloudy look that came with age. On the first day, he gathered everyone together and spoke in a voice like breaking ice. "We observe only," Soren said firmly. "We use cameras. We use drones. We do not approach the creatures. We do not attract their attention." 3 researchers died on the last expedition because they forgot these rules. I will not lose anyone on this mission." Jake nodded along with the others. He understood the rules. He also knew he would not follow them. Before leaving Earth's orbital station, Jake had received a message from Dr. Mira Voss. She was his supervisor back home, an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes who had spent 30 years studying alien life. Her message had been short and clear. "I know what you are planning," she had written. "I cannot stop you. But please, Jake, be careful. Observation only. We cannot afford to lose you." Jake had not replied. Some things were easier to explain after they were done. On his third night at base camp, Jake waited until the Velthari scientists entered their sleeping pods. The pods were small protective shells that kept them safe while they rested. Once the camp fell quiet, Jake slipped away into the darkness. The twin moons of Sarath Prime hung low in the sky, casting silver light through the purple leaves. Jake moved slowly and carefully down the cliff path. His boots made soft sounds on the rocky ground. His heart pounded in his ears, but his breathing stayed calm. He had done this many times before on Earth, moving through darkness, approaching animals that could hurt him. The principle was always the same. Stay calm, move slowly, show no fear. The mist parted as he reached the edge of a rocky platform. Below him, about 20 feet away, 3 shapes sat on a stone ledge. The glider's Jake stopped moving. He lowered himself to the ground, crossing his legs beneath him. He did not reach for anything. He did not make any sudden motions. He simply sat there, breathing in the cool night air, watching the creatures that everyone had warned him to fear. The largest glider was clearly the leader. His scales were dark purple, almost black, and old scars crossed his snout like battle marks. His golden eyes scanned the forest constantly, watching for threats. The second glider was smaller and more graceful, with scales so dark they seemed to drink the moonlight. A female, Jake guessed. She groomed her wings with slow, careful movements. The third glider was young, maybe still an adolescent. Its movements were quick and curious, and it kept looking around at every sound. Jake did not try to get closer. He did not call out or make gestures. He just existed in their space. He let them see him. He let them smell him. He let them understand that he was there. The large male noticed him first. Those golden eyes locked onto Jake with frightening intensity. Jake felt the weight of that stare like a physical force. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to run. The creature could kill him in seconds. Its venom could dissolve his flesh before he even felt the pain. But Jake did not run. He met the creature's gaze and held it. Not with aggression. Not with challenge. Just with quiet acknowledgement. "I see you. I know what you are. I am not here to hurt you." Time passed. Jake did not know how much. The moons moved across the sky. The mist shifted and swirled. The large glider watched him without moving. The female continued grooming. The young one tilted its head with obvious curiosity. Nothing happened. No attack. No screaming. No death. Just a human sitting on a rock and 3 deadly creatures sitting on another rock, sharing the same night air. When the sky began to lighten with the first hints of dawn, Jake slowly stood up. His muscles ached from sitting so long. He took 1 step backward, then another. The large glider's eyes followed him, but the creature made no move to chase. Jake climbed back up the cliff path. His hands shook slightly, but not from fear. From excitement. From wonder. He had just spent 3 hours within striking distance of the most dangerous creatures in this sector of the galaxy, and they had not attacked him. They had watched him. They had studied him. They had let him go. Back at camp, Jake slipped into his tent just as the Velthari began waking. His body was exhausted, but his mind was racing. Tonight had been only the first step. He had shown the gliders that he was not a threat. Now he needed to show them something more. He needed to show them that he could be trusted. He thought about what he had learned back home. About horses that kicked until they learned that humans brought food and safety. About dogs that growled until they learned that humans offered warmth and companionship. About his grandfather's patient voice explaining that every wild creature carried two things inside them: fear and hope. Fear of being hurt. Hope of finding something better. The gliders were afraid of outsiders, because outsiders had always come with weapons and traps. But Jake had come with nothing but patience. That made him different. That made him interesting. He smiled as he lay down to rest. Tonight he would go back. And the night after that. And the night after that. He would sit with those creatures until they stopped seeing him as a stranger. He would earn their trust, one silent hour at a time. Outside his tent, the purple sun rose over Sareth Prime. Somewhere in the valley below, 3 venomous gliders settled into their nests, perhaps wondering about the strange soft creature who had watched them through the night. Neither Jake nor the gliders knew it yet, but something had begun. Something that would change everything. 2 weeks had passed since Jake first sat with the gliders. Every night, he crept away from camp after the Velthury scientists went to sleep. Every night, he climbed down to the rocky platform and took his place among the creatures that could kill him with a single bite. And every night, they let him stay. He had given them names. The large male with the scarred snout became Duke. It seemed right somehow. The creature carried himself like royalty, proud and watchful, the clear ruler of his small family. The sleek female with the darkest scales became Shadow. She moved so quietly that sometimes Jake lost sight of her even when she was only a few feet away. And the young one, the curious adolescent with the endless energy, became Scout. The name fit because the young glider was always exploring, always testing, always pushing boundaries. Jake understood that naming them was a human thing to do. Animals did not care what sounds humans made, but the names helped Jake see them as individuals. Not monsters, not threats, just living creatures trying to survive in their own world. The Velthury scientists had started to notice that something was strange. Jake slept through most of the day. He was always tired. He asked questions about the gliders that seemed too specific, too personal. Soren, the team leader, pulled Jake aside one morning with worry flickering through his crystal body. "You are not simply observing, are you?" Soren asked. His voice carried a deep concern. "You are doing something more. Something dangerous." Jake could not lie to him. "I have been spending time near the gliders at night. Close to them. On the rocks below the cliff." Soren's entire body flashed with alarm. The colors inside him swirled like a storm. "You have been within their reach?" "Human hardly. This is madness. They could have killed you 100 times over. But they did not," Jake said calmly. "They watched me. They let me stay. They are starting to trust me." "Trust?" Soren made a sharp sound like shattering glass. "These creatures do not trust. They only wait for the right moment to strike. You are being foolish. You are being reckless." Jake shook his head. "I understand why you see it that way. Every other species that came here treated the gliders like monsters. They used weapons. They used traps. They took defensive positions. But I came with nothing. I showed them that I am not a threat. That makes me different." Soren stared at him for a long moment. Finally, the Velthury's colors settled into something that looked like sad acceptance. "I cannot stop you. But when you die, I will have to explain to your people why I allowed this to happen." "You will not have to explain anything," Jake said with a small smile. "I promise." That night, Jake tried something new. During the day, he had noticed the gliders hunting small rodent-like creatures in the valley. The animals were about the size of rabbits, with gray fur and long ears. Jake managed to catch 3 of them using simple traps. He carried the creatures down to the rocky platform in a cloth bag. The gliders were already there, watching him approach with their golden eyes. Jake stopped at his usual spot, about 20 feet away from them. Slowly, carefully, he opened the bag and placed the 3 small animals on the rock in front of him. Then he backed away and sat down. For a long time, nothing happened. Duke watched him. Shadow watched him. Scout shifted restlessly, clearly interested in the food, but unsure about the situation. Jake waited. Patience was everything. Finally, Scout made a decision. The young glider spread its wings and glided down from the ledge. It landed on Jake's platform, barely 10 feet away from him. Jake held his breath. His heart hammered so hard he could hear it in his ears. Scout sniffed the air, then crept forward toward the food. The young glider grabbed one of the small animals and flew back to the ledge. It ate quickly, making soft sounds of satisfaction. Duke and Shadow watched but did not move. Jake smiled. It was a beginning. Over the next week, he brought food every night. Scout came to expect it. The young glider would wait for Jake to arrive, bouncing with obvious excitement. Shadow started coming down for food too, though she always kept more distance than Scout. Duke never came, but he watched. Always watching. Judging. Then came the night that changed. Everything. Jake had placed the food on the rock and settled into his sitting position. Scout glided down as usual, but this time the young glider did not take the food and leave. Instead, Scout landed right next to Jake, close enough to touch Dot. Jake did not move. He did not breathe. He felt the heat radiating from Scout's scaled body. He smelled the strange, sharp scent that came from the glider's skin. One bite from those jaws would end his life. One drop of venom would dissolve his flesh. Scout pressed its snout against Jake's open palm. The scales were smooth and warm. The glider's breath puffed against his skin. Jake felt a moment of pure terror, followed by a wave of incredible joy. This creature, this deadly predator, was choosing to touch him, choosing to trust him. Slowly, carefully, Jake moved his other hand. He reached toward the spot behind Scout's wing joint, the place where he had seen the gliders groom each other. His fingers touched the scales there and scratched gently. Scout made a sound. A low, rumbling vibration that Jake felt more than heard. It was almost like a cat's purr. The young glider pressed closer, clearly enjoying the sensation. From the ledge above, Duke and Shadow watched. They did not attack. They did not cry out in alarm. Something in their golden eyes had shifted. They were seeing Jake differently now. Not as a threat, not as prey, but as something else entirely. Something they had never encountered before. When dawn came, Jake climbed back to camp with shaking legs and tears in his eyes. He had done it. He had touched a venomous glider and lived. More than that, the glider had touched him first. The Valkyrie scientists found him sitting outside his tent, laughing quietly to himself. Human hardly? Soren approached with cautious curiosity. Is something wrong? Jake looked up at the alien with a smile that stretched across his entire face. Something is very, very right, he said. Tonight, I am going to introduce you to my friends. Soren's crystal body flickered with confusion. What friends? Jake pointed toward the valley below. The ones everyone said could not be tamed. The footage spread through the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every station, every ship, every planet with a communications array saw the same images. A human male sitting on a rocky ledge. 3 venomous gliders curled around him like sleeping dogs. The young one resting its head on his lap. The female grooming his hair with her tongue. The scarred male lying beside him, eyes half closed in contentment. On Nexus 7, the council chamber erupted into chaos. "This must be a trick," roared the Kreth ambassador. The Kreth were massive creatures with 4 arms and thick armored skin. This particular ambassador, a war veteran named Grath, slammed all 4 fists on the table. "The footage is fake. No one can tame a venomous glider. Our scientists have tried for 200 years. "The footage is real," said Tyrek. The Valkyrie ambassador stood at the center of the chamber, his crystal body projecting the video for all to see. "I have confirmed it with our team on Sarath Prime. Human hardly has achieved what we believed impossible." "Then he used some kind of chemical," suggested a Melloran delegate. The Mellarans were small beings covered in soft feathers, and their voices came out in musical chirps. Humans are known for their chemical sciences. Perhaps he drugged the creatures. "No chemicals were used," Tyrek replied. "No technology. No weapons. Human Hartley simply sat with the gliders every night for 3 weeks. He brought them food. He showed them patience. He earned their trust." The chamber fell silent. Dozens of alien species stared at the images on the screen. The human looked so small compared to the deadly creatures around him. So fragile. And yet the gliders treated him with obvious affection. Ambassador Veth, an elderly Selthari with copper-colored scales, leaned forward in her seat. "How is this possible?" she asked. Her voice was quiet but carried through the room. "The gliders have killed 17 researchers over the past century. What makes this human different?" No one had an answer. On Sarath Prime, Jake received a communication request from Dr. Myra Voss back on Earth. He accepted the call while sitting outside his tent, watching the sunset paint the purple forest in shades of gold and pink. "Jake," Dr. Voss said. Her face appeared on his portable screen, and her expression mixed shock with something that looked like pride. "The entire Galactic Union is talking about you. They are pulling records on human history with animals. They are reading about our wolves, our horses, our elephants. They are trying to understand how we do what we do." Jake smiled. Duke was lying nearby, watching the sunset with him. The massive glider had started following Jake around during the day, like a loyal dog that refused to leave its owner's side. What do they want to know? They want to know your method, your techniques, the secret formula that lets humans tame untamable creatures. Jake laughed softly and reached over to scratch Duke behind his ear ridge. The glider made a deep rumbling sound of pleasure. "There's no secret formula, Dr. Voss. There's no special technique. I just did what my grandfather taught me to do with wild horses, which is, I waited. I showed patience. I approached them not as a hunter or a scientist, but as someone who wanted to understand them. I did not come with weapons or traps. I did not wear protective armor. I came as myself, vulnerable and open, and I let them decide whether to trust me." Dr. Voss was silent for a moment. "The Council wants to speak with you directly. They have questions that I cannot answer. Tell them I will talk to them when I return to Nexus 7, but they need to understand something first. What I did here cannot be taught in a lecture. It cannot be written in a manual. It requires something that most species do not have enough of." "What is that?" Jake looked at Duke, at the creature that everyone said could never be tamed. "The willingness to be hurt. The courage to sit with danger and accept that you might not survive. Humans have always done this. We have always reached toward things that could kill us, hoping to find connection instead of death. It is a kind of madness, I suppose. But it is our madness. It is what makes us human." 2 days later, Jake returned to Nexus 7. He did not come alone. Duke, Shadow, and Scout traveled with him on a specially modified transport ship. The Valkyrie had objected at first, terrified of having venomous gliders aboard a vessel full of passengers. But the gliders stayed calm throughout the journey, never once showing aggression toward anyone. When Jake walked through the station's main corridor, 3 deadly predators following behind him like well-trained pets. Every creature he passed stopped to stare. Some ran away in fear. Others pressed against the walls, trembling. A few brave souls simply watched in silent wonder. Tyrek met him at the entrance to the council chamber. The Valthyre's crystal body shimmered with complicated emotions that Jake had learned to read over months of friendship. "Human Hartley," Tyrek said, "what you have done is extraordinary. But I must ask you something that has troubled me since I first saw the footage." "Ask. Were you not afraid? When you sat with these creatures for the first time, when any moment could have been your last, did you not feel terror?" Jake considered the question carefully. Duke pressed against his leg, seeking contact, and Jake absently stroked the glider's scales. "Of course, I was afraid," he admitted. "Fear is natural. Fear keeps us alive. But humans have learned something important over thousands of years of living alongside dangerous creatures. Fear does not have to control your actions. You can feel the terror in your heart and still choose to stay. You can acknowledge that death is possible and still reach out your hand. But why?" Tyrek pressed. "Why take such a risk? Why not simply observe from safety like every other species does?" Jake smiled. It was the same smile he had worn when his grandfather first put him on the back of a wild horse, when he was 7 years old and certain he would fall. "Because some things are worth the risk," he said. "Because behind every creature that can hurt you, there might be a friend waiting to be found. And because if no one is willing to take the first step, then nothing ever changes." Tyrek's crystal body glowed with soft, warm light. "You are a strange species, Human Hartley." "Yes," Jake agreed. "But perhaps the galaxy needs a little strangeness." The chamber doors opened before them, and Jake walked in to face the gathered ambassadors of 42 worlds. His 3 gliders walked beside him, and together they stepped into history. 6 months had passed since Jake first returned to Nexus 7 with his 3 gliders. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. On Sereth Prime, the first Venomous glider preserve had been established. Humans and aliens worked side by side, learning new methods of approaching dangerous creatures. The old rules of distance and weapons had been replaced by patience and respect. Shadow had laid a clutch of 5 eggs, and the entire research community watched with excitement as the new generation prepared to hatch. A young xenobiologist named Katie Monroe had joined the preserve 3 months ago. She was 24 years old, with red hair and a quiet determination that reminded Jake of himself. On her first day, she had asked to work with Scout, and Jake had agreed. For 8 long weeks, she sat with the young glider every day. She brought food. She spoke softly. She waited. Now Scout followed Katie everywhere, just as Duke followed Jake. The bond between human and glider had proven not to be unique to Jake. It could be taught. It could be shared. Other species were learning too, though they found it harder. Patience did not come naturally to most beings in the galaxy. On this particular day, Jake stood in the grand amphitheater of Nexus 7. The massive room could hold thousands, and today every seat was filled. Delegates from 42 species had gathered to hear him speak. Crystal and Valthyre sat beside armored Kreth. Feathered Melorans perched next to scaled Selfari. Dozens of other races filled the remaining seats, all watching the single human standing at the center of the stage behind Jake. A huge screen showed a live feed from Sereth Prime. Katie sat on a sunny rock with Scout curled beside her, the young glider's head resting on her knee. In the distance, Duke and Shadow glided through the purple forest with their wild counterparts. Accepted by their own kind, despite their bonds with humans, Jake took a deep breath and began to speak. You asked me to come here today to explain what humans did on Seraph Prime. You wanted to know our methods, our secrets, our special techniques. Many of you believed there must be some hidden technology, some chemical compound, some trick that we used to tame creatures that your researchers could not approach. He paused and looked out at the assembled faces. So many different shapes, so many different colors, so many different ways of seeing the world. The truth is simpler than you might expect. We have no special technology. We have no secret formulas. What we have is something that developed over thousands of years on a dangerous planet full of creatures that could kill us. We call it stubbornness. We call it curiosity. We call it the refusal to accept that something is impossible just because it is difficult. The screen behind him shifted to show historical images from Earth. Humans riding horses across open plains. Humans walking beside wolves. Humans swimming with creatures from the deep ocean. Humans sitting with great cats, with bears, with animals that had claws and teeth, and every reason to see humans as prey. On our homeworld, we lived alongside predators from the very beginning. They hunted us. They killed our ancestors. Every logical instinct said we should fear them, avoid them, destroy them before they destroyed us. But somewhere along the way, a few strange humans decided to try something different. Instead of running from wolves, they sat with them. Instead of fighting horses, they rode them. Instead of killing every dangerous creature they met, they asked a simple question: can we be friends? The amphitheater was completely silent. Every eye, every sensory organ, every form of attention was focused on Jake. This approach did not always work. Many humans died trying to befriend creatures that could not be befriended. Many more were hurt, scarred, left with wounds that never fully healed. But the ones who succeeded changed everything. Wolves became dogs. Wild horses became partners. Creatures that should have been our enemies became our companions, our helpers, our family. Jake walked to the edge of the stage, closer to the audience. His voice softened but still carried through the vast room. When I first sat with Duke, Shadow, and Scout on that rocky ledge, I was terrified. My body screamed at me to run. Every survival instinct the first possessed told me I was making a fatal mistake. But I had learned something from my grandfather, from my parents, from generations of humans who came before me. Fear is a warning, not a command. You can feel it and still choose to stay. The screen showed Scout pressing against Katie's hand for the first time. The young woman's face glowed with the same wonder Jake had felt on that night months ago. The galaxy is full of warnings. Never touch this creature. Never approach that species. Never attempt what no one has succeeded at before. Some of those warnings exist for good reasons. Some dangers are real and should be respected. But many warnings exist simply because no one has been patient enough, brave enough, or stubborn enough to try another way. Jake smiled, thinking of his grandfather's ranch, of the wild horses that had become gentle, of the stray dogs that had become loyal friends. Humans will always try another way. When the galaxy says something is impossible, we ask why. When other species see monsters, we look for the creature hiding behind the fear. When everyone else gives up, we sit down in the darkness and wait. It is not because we are stronger than you. It is not because we are smarter. It is because we carry something inside us that refuses to accept limits. Call it foolishness. Call it madness. We call it hope. He turned to look at the screen, where Duke now appeared beside Shadow, watching over the preserve that had become their home. The venomous gliders of Seraph Prime are no longer classified as untamable. They are no longer seen as monsters. They are creatures with their own society, their own emotions, their own capacity for trust. All it took to discover this was one human willing to sit with them in the darkness and believe that connection was possible. Jake. Face the audience one final time. I am not here to tell you that your warnings are wrong. I am here to tell you that warnings are not the end of the story. Every creature, every challenge, every impossible thing is waiting for someone brave enough to take the first step. Humans have always been willing to take that step, and we always will be. He stepped back from the edge of the stage. For a moment, silence filled the amphitheater. Then, Tyrek rose from his seat, his crystal body blazing with bright light. He brought his hands together in the Velthari gesture of deepest respect. One by one, every delegate in the chamber stood. Kreth pounded their fists in approval. Malaran sang out in high, beautiful voices. Dozens of species joined together in a wave of gratitude and wonder that washed over Jake like warm sunlight. On Sarath Prime, Katie looked up at the sky as if she could see the celebration happening light years away. Scout chirped beside her, and she laughed with pure joy. And somewhere in the purple forest, Duke spread his wings and soared through the evening air, no longer a monster, no longer a threat, but living proof that some boundaries existed only until someone was stubborn enough to cross them. The galaxy had learned something new about humans that day. They were small and fragile. They lived short lives on a dangerous world. But they carried within them a fire that no warning could extinguish. The fire of hope. The fire of connection. The fire of reaching toward the unknown and refusing to let go. It was, perhaps, the most human thing of all.